Drag racers, to a man, have a fire in the belly that begins about the time they see over a steering wheel.
First dragster that I ever saw was in Hot Rod Magazine way back when, and the first picture one I saw, the first one that I ever saw was one I built in a little three-wall garage at home in a dirt floor and took it to the drag strip and won my first little race, and boy, the hook was set big time then.
These men withstand the hardships and sacrifices of the road in the undying belief that it will all be worth it in the long run.
You didn't realize it was tough. It was a world out there of sleeping 6 guys in the room, sharing a hamburger or a bologna sandwich. I mean, you didn't think you had it tough.
But yesterday, young Whit Bazemore of Atlanta learned the truth about having it tough in this incredible test of a driver's soul. In a split second, everything that he and his team had worked years for was destroyed. In the moments after this incredible incident, Whit was philosophical enough to assess his entire career.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a funny car racer, and I'm a funny car racer now, but every once in a while you got to have second thoughts, and we'll be back, I'm sure. My head's a little sore right now.
Whit Bazemore this weekend passed one of the tests that make a veteran driver: the ability to discern a bright future in the face of disaster. He'll not only be back, he'll be back stronger. Today, from the lush farm country of Central Ohio, NBC Sports World presents the 29th annual Oldsmobile Springnationals. Big crowd in excess of 20,000 on a hot and humid Central Ohio afternoon at the National Trails Raceway just outside Columbus, Ohio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to NBC Sports World. I'm Tom Hammond. And you know, springtime means great racing events throughout the world of sports, whether it's the Indianapolis 500, the Kentucky Derby, or these Spring Nationals, one of the oldest and most prestigious stops on the year-long drag racing tour. Today, we'll be bringing you 3 classes of competition: Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock. And as always, we'll have coverage from every angle with Steve Evans and Frank Hawley roaming around the track. And right now, Steve's in the pit area to take a look at one of the leading competitors in Top Fuel.
Thank you, Tom. Texas Top Fuel racer Eddie Hill has had a pretty terrific season so far. He's won 3 NHRA national events, and he leads the Winston points. And he's done it with a fairly unconventional car. You see, the rules allow a 300-inch wheelbase axle to axle, about the length of a city bus. Eddie Hill's car is shorter than that at only 285 inches. And that fact did not escape Kenny Bernstein. Bernstein parked the winning car you saw in Sports World 2 weeks ago in New Jersey in favor of a brand new short machine. And so far, it is working perfectly. He defeated Shelly Anderson in round number 1 in a pretty good car race. But in the elapsed time department, Eddie Hill is still the king of the short cars. He has low elapsed time of eliminations today at 4.91 seconds. There's big stories breaking in the funny car category. Here's Frank Hawley.
Thanks, Steve. The first story we've got in Fuel Funny Car Eliminator is right here with this team, the Johnny West Wyatt Radke team. Now, this is a group that in the past had a hard time even qualifying in the top part of the program, but they came into the Spring Nationals and qualified on the pole, the #1 position, with a 5.14-second run. Not even John Force could better that, and John ended up qualifying #2. Well, John came to this race to try and win an unprecedented 6 Fuel Funny Car races in a row, but that was not to be.
Well, that's the way it falls. That's the way it is. Right now, we're just looking to find out what caused that. This car's been running so smooth, and I hit the throttle, it didn't go 100 feet, and boom, it just exploded.
I don't think any of you John Force fans have anything to worry about, because at this point in the year, John has a very comfortable points lead. Now, the story once again in Pro Stock is the Johnson story. Warren and his son Kurt. But the one driver that could stop the Johnson juggernaut is young Scott Jeffreyon. Now back to Tom in the tower.
All right, Frank, we'll begin with the Top Fuel competition in round 2. And we're on board with Joe Amato, a camera riding in his car, pointing back at the engine as Amato takes on Doug Herbert in this second round race. Here are the Top Fuel point standings after the first round. Eddie Hill leads. Kenny Bernstein is second. Joe Amato in third place with Ed McCullough fourth.
The car of Doug Herbert is only about 3 races old and has been a huge disappointment until they rolled into Columbus. This is by far its best performance. Now, Herbert qualified number 3 at a great 492, considering the weather and the racetrack. He beat Rance McDaniel, the Mopar Nationals runner-up in round number 1. Joe Amato, one thing for sure, he's carrying all of his lucky charms, including his little Snoopy doll. He qualified only 11th, and that's not very good for the 5-time champ. He beat Jimmy Nix in round number 1. The racing distance is a 1/4 mile. The cars, as I said earlier, most of them anyway, are 300-inch wheelbase, a little over 2,000 pounds, sporting about 5,000 horsepower. If, of course, you can make that kind of power in the humidity we have today. You can see it hanging in the air. Joe Amato had a very nice advantage off the starting line, but Herbert had the power. 497, 296 miles per hour. Amato just a 517 at only 277 miles per hour.
And Amato eliminated on his 49th birthday. Let's move now to Mike Dunn and Scott Coletta in round 2. Coletta has the lane choice.
And Scott is the number 1 qualifier, the quickest car of the entire event at 4.90 seconds. He's up against Mike Dunn, who qualified number 9 at a 5:03, but got to Ed the Ace McCullough in round number 1. Lane choice has gone to Coletta, and Frank Hawley, he's taken the far side everybody has. Is that real or perceived?
Well, sometimes you get the best cars, just follow the best cars down the racetrack, but I think there might be a little bit of an advantage on that side of the racetrack.
All right, the lights come down, the race is on.
Oh, that's done.
Mike Dunn is on fire. Either he doesn't know it, he cares to ignore it, and Mike Dunn wins it. What a huge upset, a 5:29 at only 2:53. The engine had expired well before it got to the finish line. To Coletta, also with a Herd engine at 5:40.
Absolutely unbelievable. You know, with the rear-engine dragster, of course, Mike Dunn would know that the car was losing horsepower, but he couldn't see the fire that was coming out the back of the engine. He probably would have shut it off a little bit earlier, but down near the end of the track, it looked like Scott Coletta had a problem, and Mike stayed on the throttle to win the round. Unbelievable.
Mike Dunn wins the race despite the fire, and he's at the end of the track with our Steve Evans.
Mike Dunn doing his impersonation of Halley's Comet. That thing was on fire when you stepped on it till you stepped off it.
Well, I didn't know that. I mean, I felt it dropped some cylinders and laying over and everything else, and I was about ready to shut it off, and then I seen him have some trouble, and so we just stayed with it. It's not a pretty way to win, but, you know, what are you going to do?
And you get plenty of parts.
Oh, we got plenty of parts. We'll be back.
And they must prepare the car now for the semifinals, and we'll be back with more Top Fuel competition.
This is NBC's Sports World, and today it's brought to you by Oldsmobile, by Craftsman, a line of 1,600 hand tools made in America, guaranteed forever, only at Sears, by Goodyear, #1 in tires, and by Castrol Syntec, the synthetic oil that protects in ways other oils can't.
Welcome back to the National Trails Raceway in Ohio and the Oldsmobile Springnationals. We're in the Top Fuel competition round 2. In this race, riding once again with Kenny Bernstein as he takes on Tommy Johnson Jr.
You know, if you're unhappy with the fuel economy of your vehicle, these cars will make you feel pretty good. They gulp about 12 gallons of nitromethane fuel per quarter-mile run. And you want some pump shock? Nitro these days is right at $25 a gallon. One of the biggest expenses they face is the annual fuel bill.
Kenny Bernstein, fresh from a win in the Mopar Nationals, chasing Eddie Hill, the national point standing. Qualified number 5 in 4.96, beating Shelly Anderson, as he meets Tommy Johnson Jr., qualified 13th with a win over Jim Head in round 1.
Well, Tom, Kenny Bernstein, because of his quicker run in the previous round, has lane choice and has, like a lot of the other drivers, selected to race on the right side of that racetrack.
Kenny Bernstein restraining his 5,000 horsepower. Look to the left. There you see the Tommy Johnson Jr. car. It's still there. It's gone. Kenny Bernstein drives away from Johnson. 493, 295 miles an hour to a departing 518 at 276 miles an hour. Kenny Bernstein to the final 4.
And now we'll move to our final second round race with Eddie Hill getting ready. He's the national points leader in Top Fuel. He'll be taking on Don the Snake Prudhomme in this second round race. Prudhomme loves this track. In fact, he has taken the Top Fuel competition here the last 2 years in a row, but this has not been a good season for him. In fact, this is the first time all season long that he has made it into round 2. By contrast, though, this is the best season ever for Eddie Hill, the 57-year-old driver who is the national points leader, looking to add to his lead with 4 points here today. Now let's go to the end of the track where Steve Evans is with Kenny Bernstein, already has advanced to the semifinals.
Well, that was Kenny Bernstein's 6th consecutive round victory here on Sports World in just a couple of weeks.
Well, it's great to be on Sports World, isn't it?
493.
Oh, fine run. I didn't know it'd do it out here this hot and this humid and with the track the way it is, but looks like she's calmed down enough.
Lane choice a big deal?
Oh, I think so. I think the right might be a little smoother than the left, but, you know, NHRA and the safety safari does such a great job. They're pretty even.
You know, and back to Don Prudhomme for a minute. It's just hard to believe that a driver could be a national champion on top for so many years and be struggling like Don is this year. They tested for 5 days before they came to this race just to try to get to the point where they could stop a driver like Eddie Hill in this round of competition.
Eddie Hill qualified second, 4.91, beating Michael Brotherton in round 1.
Eddie's wife, Ursi, helping to stage the car. It's hard to see those little bitty front wheels on these Top Fuel machines. They moved into the infrared beams. First, the pre-stage on top is lit. Either driver thus far willing to stage. Hill goes in first, followed by Prudhomme. And the snake strikes. You can see the whole shot. Oh, but Eddie Hill's power saves the day for that team. A 498 at 289 miles an hour to the Snake's 506 at 283. But with 0.07 of a second off the starting line advantage, it looked a lot closer than that.
Steve, you could see that Don Prudhomme has not lost his edge as a driver. He hit that throttle right on those yellow lights and got off the starting line first. Don just needs to get some work done to that car so that his car performance will equal his driving performance.
Hill and Prudhomme right together through the quarter mile, hitting the finish almost simultaneously. Hill by 0.07 of a second. So the pairings are set for the Top Fuel Final Four, with Eddie Hill taking on Doug Herbert. Herbert with a lane choice by 0.07 of a second. And then Kenny Bernstein against Mike Dunn. Bernstein with a lane choice there. Steve now is at the far end of the track with Eddie Hill.
I'll tell you what, Thrill, your 498 almost didn't beat his 506.
Well, I tell you what, I was looking at an awful lot of his car. I did win the deal, didn't I?
Yes.
Boy, it was, it had to be close, a matter of thousandths, I know. Looked like we probably just ran a little faster, maybe down on this end or something, but...
The way Bernstein is running and you're running, this could be a battle of the short cars where it's all over.
Well, it could be. Short cars work pretty good, don't they?
Should have kept that secret, huh?
Well, I tried to. I did for 5 years, but it finally got out.
Eddie Hill survives a close one to move to the semifinals. Now we go to the funny car competition, round 2. We'll see Cruz Pedregon against Gary Clapshaw. Pedregon, the Winston funny car champion from 1992 and currently 3rd in the 93-point standings, against Gary Clapshaw, who seems to have some trouble getting that car ready for this second round race. John Force with a commanding lead in the point standings for 93 after winning 5 events in a row. Al Hoffman second. Pedregon is currently 3rd. Force with a commanding lead, but out of this competition.
Gary Clapshaw just now making his burnout, even though Pedregon is halfway backed up, but that's not all that unusual. Often one driver will want to do the burnout last, have a little more heat in his engine, and create a little more horsepower. But more horsepower is probably the last thing Cruz Pedregon wants on this tricky track.
Pedregon qualified 3rd at 5.22, beating Del Warsha in round 1. While Clapshaw came in as the 6th fastest qualifier, 5.24, he beat Gary Saloni in the first round.
There's a problem with the Clapshaw car. There's Pedregon's crew asking Buster Couch, hurry him up. Buster says, get out of here. This is my world. Frank, what's going on?
Well, you know, you just can't sit there forever and wait on your opponent as much as you would like to. The car could actually run out of fuel before it got to the finish line. The engine could get too hot and damage parts. Buster Couch has to make a decision right now.
He's motioning Pedregon into the beams, and he sends him. Pedregon hammers it through at a 5.26, 280 miles an hour. Pedregon with a single to go into the Final Four.
That's a tough decision the chief starter has to make, to shut off a driver, have a single round, and not allow that driver to compete. But those kinds of tough decisions are what Buster Couch has been doing for over 30 years.
Clapshaw left at the starting line as Pedregon cruises to the semifinals. Welcome back to National Trails Raceway as these pictures come to you from the Bud 1 airship. Anheuser-Busch's aerial ambassador, piloted today by Corky Belanger, Mike Hance, and Bill Clark. This 194-foot-long airship bringing you pictures from more than 1,000 feet above the track. Now let's check in the top fuel pits with Frank.
Thanks, Tom. I'm over in the Darrell Gwynn pit area to see the results of that fiery victory that Mike Dunn had. Here's the engine that was in the car. What happened is it blew the head gasket out on both ends of the block on this side. That allowed the exhaust pressure to get out and actually melted the aluminum. The oil from the valley came right out that hole, and that's what all the fire was. Well, I'll tell you, the crew said that they were yelling to Mike Dunn on the radio to shut the car off, but at the moment he was going to shut it off, he saw Scott Kalita had problems. His car fell back, and he knew he had to stay on the throttle for victory. But they've got a brand new engine in the car, and they say they're confident they're going to be in the next round of competition.
All right, Frank, we'll look for that in the Top Fuel semifinals. Meantime, let's continue with round 2 of the funny car competition. Wyatt Radke against Chuck Etchells.
Wyatt Radke is my favorite story of this entire event. Driving that man's car, Johnny West, owner, builder, crew chief. They came in here qualified #1 for the first time in their life, an extra $4,000. They have everyone talking to themselves. They've only made 2 runs in qualifying, both in the heat of the day.
Radke, the top qualifier, 5.14, beating Jerry Caminito in round 1, while Etchells came in at number 8, 5.29, beating Tom Hoover in the first round of competition.
Well, Chuck Etchells has one of the top crew chiefs in the business, that being Tim Richards. So this car, frankly, I think is capable of anything in this round.
It really is capable because Tim Richards pushed Joe Amato to a number of Winston championships in the top fuel category. And on the other side, Johnny West has joined the long list of crew chiefs that has stopped driving and now is a full-time crew chief, and it looks like that's being very successful for Wyatt Radke.
With the carbon fiber bodies, they look like they have a lot of substance. As Johnny West looks on, take the body off, and they're just a 5,000 horsepower go-kart. Wheelbase less than half that of a top fuel dragster. They left together, but at the finish line by a foot, maybe, it is Wyatt Radke, 5.24 at 279 miles an hour. They are back on track after slowing down in the first round. Etchells out of here at 5.26. Well, that was a beauty, Frank.
You know, I think that Wyatt Radke's performance on the left side of the racetrack has showed a lot of the drivers that maybe the lanes are a little more even than they thought earlier. I think that you're going to see some victories on both sides of the racetrack for the rest of the day.
Well, Radke qualified #1, and he still looks good in round 2 as he comes through with a 5.24 elapsed time, and that is the lowest elapsed time of the elimination so far. He's with Steve.
Have you ever had more fun in your whole life than you're having this weekend?
No, I haven't. This is one of the best days of my life. I'll tell you, one of the best weekends of my life. I love doing this, and I want to do so well at it. The Westco Motorola Krager Daytona is running fine.
A 5.24, but a hole has mysteriously appeared in the side of the body. What's that?
Brand new body, 4th lap on it now. We're still getting some of the kinks out of it, so apparently we got something going on inside the fiberglass work there.
Not an engine problem.
Wyatt Radke looking good, but he still needs some work on those sponsors, getting them all down straight.
I think he's trying to get comfortable winning. Well, here's a man, Gordon Minio, that won in the first round, but he had a lot of luck. John Force blew the blower right alongside him, and Gordon, who had horrible problems, got to the finish line first. Gordon's had worse problems than that. A number of fires for the past 2 years. He deserves a break.
He'll be racing against Mark Oswald, who qualified 7th at 5.25, beating Bob Elliott in round 1. Looks like trouble for the Mark Oswald car.
That's really a tough break. Crew Chief Bill Schultz asked Mark to shut the car off. They were really, really close getting up here between rounds. They barely made it for this round of competition. Obviously, something broke on the car. They didn't get something back together correctly, and it looks like it's going to be a single for Gordon Minio.
It's been a rather bizarre afternoon on the starting line in funny car competition. Pedregon gets a bye, and now here goes Minio, and he has huge problems. And doesn't this break the heart of Mark Oswald when you know, I could have beat that car? That's got to be what's going through his helmet right now.
Mark Oswald's car being pushed away as the charmed life continues for Gordon Minio. 1 spot left in the funny car semifinals now as Gordy Bonin takes on Al Hoffman. That's the Bonin team.
two of the top drivers in the sport. Al Hoffman, a number of years ago, started racing funny cars, didn't have a great amount of success, then got crew chief Tommy Anderson on the board, and I'll tell you, for the last couple of years, they've been really, really flying down the racetrack. Gordy Bonin this year has been doing a great job and got to the final rounds at one race previously.
Let's go to Steve with Gordon Mineo.
For a guy who has had no luck for 2 seasons, you're getting it in spades today.
You know, I told everybody if it runs on 8, we'll probably smoke the tires. Exactly what we did. We got to do something here. This track's pretty tricky for us. We've been stumbling all weekend, you know, dropping cylinders, blah, blah, blah. Got lucky and rode the bull against Forrest and loved it and beat him, and I love it. You know, somebody's got to stop that, man.
Here's how hot it is. This fell out of his fire suit, a cold, wet towel.
Oh, yeah. I love this. It's my baby here.
Flash Gordon, the Cinderella of the competition so far. Al Hoffman now getting ready for his second round run. Hoffman qualified 5th. His time was 5.23 as he beat Gary Bolger in round 1. Matched up against Gordy Bonin. Bonin qualified 4th in 5.23, beating Gary Densham in the first round of competition.
Now, Gordy Bonin was out of funny cars for almost a decade until that man Roland Leon brought him back mid-season 1993. And he certainly didn't lose any of his talent over that 10 years. Gordy Bonin in the far lane, Al Hoffman in the near lane. 2 quality cars and quality drivers staging a quality race. Oh, Gordy Bonin by a whisker. 524 to a 525. The winning differential only 2 thousandths of a second. They were virtually dead even Frank off the starting line.
That's why you have to have one of these CompuLink timing systems, because a photo finish couldn't have picked the winner here. As you said, both quality drivers. Al Hoffman's car was actually in front midway down the racetrack. I could tell you from the driver's seat, when a race is this close at 280 miles an hour down at the finish line, you don't even know who won.
Well, it was hard to tell who won. 2 thousandths of a second difference as Bonin advances to the semifinals. So the final 4 is set in funny car with Gordy Bonin taking on Wyatt Radke. Radke with the lane choice. Then Cruz Pedregon and Gordon Mineo. Pedregon with the lane choice. Meanwhile, in the Eddie Hill pit area, preparations continue for their Top Fuel semifinal match with Doug Herbert. There's Fuzzy Carter, the crew chief, making last-minute adjustments to the clutch management system. We'll be back for more racing in a moment. Welcome back to the Oldsmobile Springnationals as we move to the semifinal round in the Pro Stock competition. We're on board with Scott Jeffreyon as he takes on Kurt Johnson.
Scott Jeffreyon is driving the only Dodge in the Pro Stock field. And the Johnson you see on top of the points is Warren Johnson, Kurt's father, followed by Jeffreyon, then Kurt himself, the legendary Bob Glidden, and Larry Morgan. That's the top 5 in Winston points. If there is a Rookie of the Year this season, I think it's going to go to Kurt Johnson. Kurt qualified number 2 here at 720, beat Mark Osborne in round number 2. Scott Jeffreyon got his first and long-awaited national event victory at Memphis this year. Here he qualified that Dodge number 3 to 723, and he personally took out Bob Glidden. Now, a Pro Stock car is your car on steroids. All that's left of your car is the metal roof and the rear fenders. Everything else is custom built, but they use automotive power plants, racing gasoline, 4-barrel carburetors, and 5-speed transmissions. Now you see Scott Jeffreyon working that 5-speed, but he needed overdrive in this one. It is Kurt Johnson at 726, 190 miles an hour. Jeffreyon was close at 730, 190 miles an hour.
Now our other Pro Stock semifinal as Warren Johnson, father of Kurt, takes on Lewis Wharton. Frank, you operate that drag racing school in Gainesville, Florida. Are these Pro Stock cars difficult to drive?
Well, they certainly are, Tom. We've got cars at the school that go well over 200 miles per hour, but these Pro Stock cars with the 5-speed transmissions and the clutches are certainly not built for beginners.
Now to the far end of the track where Steve Evans is with Kurt Johnson.
So far, Kurt, this race is following the Johnson family script, 726.
Great. We repeated after that last run. The Johnson script, you got to thank my dad for it, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that engine underneath that hood right there. Amen. Thanks.
And here's the man that could upset an all-Johnson final, Lewis Wharton, backing into position as he gets set to take on Warren Johnson. Wharton qualified 13th, 7.28, as he beat Ricky Smith in round number 2.
And beating Ricky Smith is never an easy trick. That's been the highlight of the day for Worden. He has not been in the 720s, though, since qualifying. Warren Johnson qualified #1. He has qualified at every national event #1 with the exception of one, where Scott Jeffrey on nudged him out. He beat Ray Franks in round #2. So we could have another family feud between Johnson Sr. and Jr. should Warren Johnson get by Worden here. Worden away first. Will it be enough? Warden making a good race out of this, but by almost a clean car length. It is Warren Johnson going into the final round at 7:26, 192 miles an hour. Warden had 700ths off the starting line, but his 7:35 just wasn't quite enough.
So father and son final, Warren Johnson and his son Kurt Johnson. Warren with the lane choice after a 7.26 elapsed time, 0.05 of a second difference. Now to the Top Fuel semifinals. Doug Herbert will take on Eddie Hill.
Notice all of the ignition wires on Doug Herbert's car. These machines use 2 spark plugs per cylinders and 2 separate magnetos trying to fire the tremendous volume of fuel. The more fuel you can fire, well, the faster that car is going to go. Now look at all the raw fuel. Eddie Hill just put it on the high side, as they say. That is unburned nitro, so the car has plenty of fuel to launch. A supercharger backfires on Eddie Hill's car, and Doug Herbert will go to the final round for the 3rd time in his career, but he's yet to win one. He fell off a bit, though. 5 flat, 292 miles an hour.
Well, that supercharger backfire caused a broken blower belt in Eddie Hill's car, keeping the season's point leader from the finals. Welcome back to the Spring Nationals. Tom Hammond with Steve Evans and Frank Hawley as we move to the second semifinal in Top Fuel. Kenny Bernstein against Mike Dunn. We're on board with Bernstein. Earlier, Steve looked at how a Top Fuel crew functions.
How does Kenny Bernstein get a race car rebuilt in a matter of minutes? Because he's got a very talented crew. And I'm not talking about the crew chief. I'm talking about the guys that do the hard work. And they each have their own job. Now, that is Keith Adams. He does the engine assembly only on the right side of the motor, screwing those spark plugs in. On the opposite side is Mike Guger, been with Dale Armstrong a long time, and he only does engine assembly on the left side of the motor. Now, there is Charlie Nielsen, hard at work on the clutch. He also is responsible for the rear end. And then we've got Dave Fletcher, who is also the bottom end man. He's got his work done, so he's standing by in case they need something. And over in the trailer door, that handsome young man, that is Kenny's son, Brandon Bernstein, on holiday from college, and he's the gopher. He shines things up, gets the pop, gets the food, whatever it takes. All in all, they work really hard.
The Bernstein crew hoping to advance to the finals at the expense of Mike Dunn.
Look at the contrast in front wheels on these cars. Bernstein, for the first time in years, has the old traditional 17-inch dragster front wheels. Over on his opponent's car, Mike Dunn, those are the little bitty aircraft-style nose wheels. Now, the tall wheels will help Kenny get a slightly better elapsed time. They're larger in diameter, and they have more rollout through the infrared beam. But the small wheels that Mike Dunn has, they make your reaction time look real good. And Kenny Bernstein begged Dale Armstrong to take off those tall wheels for elimination, and Armstrong said, no way, we're going for elapsed time. Dunn smokes the tires. Bernstein all the way, but he too falls off in the performance department, just like Doug Herbert did. A 5:02, almost a tenth slower, at only 287 miles an hour. Only, he said.
But Kenny Bernstein alive, looking to win his 2nd straight Top Fuel event. He'll take on Doug Herbert. Herbert will have the lane choice. Semifinals now in the funny car competition. Cruz Pedregon against Gordon Mineo.
You know, with the kind of luck Gordon's been having at this race, he ought to go to Las Vegas as soon as he's done driving. He's going to need to continue that sort of luck to get by the defending champion, Cruz Pedregon, in this round.
Before we see this race, let's go to Steve with Kenny Bernstein.
Well, here in the hottest part of the day, both of our finalists have slowed down out of the 4s and into the 5s. A 5:02, Kenny.
I'm a little surprised. I think it may have hurt itself a little bit early because it grunted pretty hard. But, hey, we're in the final. I guess we can get it going from there.
And with Eddie Hill out, you're making some points progress.
I made a little points up for him, but, you know, he's a tough competitor, just as Mike Dunn and the La Victoria people are. It's a tough game out here.
Bernstein in another Top Fuel final. Now back to the funny car semifinals. Is that a problem, Frank, with Mineo's car?
Well, one of the mechanics has noticed a fuel leak, which was a lot better to notice it before they staged the car rather than after. But sometimes they will carry a wrench or two in their pockets to the starting line just for specific problems like that, and he's tightened up that fuel line, and I don't think it's going to be a problem now. We're going to have a side-by-side drag race.
Well, if we do, it'll be the first one for Gordon Mineo today. Cruz Pedregon had lane choice, and like everybody else has taken that far lane. Mineo last to stage. Pedregon streaking away. Pedregon loses traction, and Gordon Mineo's miracle weekend continues. At 5:56, he shut it off, only 221 miles an hour. Pedregon sadly needed the points that victory could have brought him.
You know, an old racer once said that I'd rather be lucky than fast anytime, and I think their words for Gordon Mineo to live by today, because this luck has got him into the finals.
So Flash Gordon Mineo is in the finals. Oh, he's just collided with another car. For some reason, Gordon's car seemed to speed up, and it looks like it's collided with one of the Eddie Hill vehicles. Steve is at the end of the track. Steve, what happened?
We have had an incident down here at the far end. Gordon Mineo came around the turn hot. The motor, apparently the throttle a little bit stuck. He is rammed into Eddie Hill's van, also into Eddie Hill's race car. We have an injury down here to one of the Hill crewmen. We don't know exactly who it is or how bad it is. I have never seen any kind of an incident like this at an NHRA championship drag race. Usually down here is certainly the safest part of the racetrack, but we have got a serious incident.
A freak accident indeed. Frank, what could have happened at the end of Gordon Mineo's run?
Well, there's no ignition shutoff on these cars, Tom. There's only a fuel shutoff, and Gordon would have used that. Somehow, the fuel got back into the engine as he was slowing down. He had the steering wheel turned full lock to the right. They have centrifugal clutches in these cars. The engine started back up again. When it was revving like that, he couldn't possibly depress the clutch pedal to slow it down. He had the brakes on as hard as he could. There's no way Gordon could have stopped it.
And look at the damage to Mineo's car. He's made it to the finals, but it's doubtful that he'll be able to compete. And we see Fuzzy Carter, the crew chief for Eddie Hill, being tended to. Apparently, there have been some injuries in that accident. Let's go to Steve now to talk with Gordon Mineo.
Gordon, I know you feel worse than anyone does about this, but it wasn't your fault, man.
Well, I'm extremely sorry for Eddie. I can live with my own damage, but I can't stand to do anything to anybody else.
The car was shutting off fine, and all of a sudden...
It was, I thought, completely dead, and I made my turn, had my hand on the brake. All of a sudden, wow, just took off. It's like you say, I think a poppet stuck open and fed it back, and it just took off.
I know you're concerned about the people here. I'll let you go.
Thank you.
A sobering accident as Fuzzy Carter and Lonnie Lewis from the Hill team have been injured as Gordon Mineo's run of luck comes to an end in a way no one could have imagined. Welcome back to the Oldsmobile Springnationals, where Gordon Mineo's freak accident has cast a pall over the competition. But the racing continues with a funny car semifinal matching Gordy Bonin and Wyatt Radke. Steve?
This is Dr. Joe Oliver, NHRA's physician in attendance. And, Doctor, I know it's early, but preliminary reports on the Eddie Hill crew people.
Two crew members injured is Fuzzy Carter and Lonnie Lewis. Fuzzy sustained a neck and chest injury. We're not sure of how serious. He is conscious. We're sending him in for preliminary workup to make sure that he does not have a serious injury. Lonnie Lewis may have a pelvic fracture. We also send him in, but by ambulance. And again, it's x-rays, IVs, preliminary precautions, and we'll have to give you a follow-up later.
And we'll give you that update on the injuries to the two crewmen when it becomes available. Meanwhile, the winner of this semifinal with the damage to Mineo's car has a good chance of taking the title.
Oh, I would agree. I don't think we'll be seeing the Mineo car. How about Wyatt Radke and Gordy Bonin? This is a real pair to draw to, and the winner, as Tom just said, may be the Spring Nationals champion. Wyatt Radke could earn $40,000. That'd be more than he's made his entire career combined. Oh, what a race. Who do you think won it? Nope, it was Gordy Bonin in the near lane with a slower elapsed time. A 5:31 to a 5:30. He won it on reaction time. Frank's at the starting line.
Leonard, maybe not as fast as you wanted, but you still won the round.
Well, that round we had a little luck. We made a mistake on the clutch back, and it dropped cylinders, didn't have any load, and we got lucky.
Luck has certainly played a huge role in the overall funny car competition, this time on the side of Gordy Bonin.
You know, Leonard was talking about the clutch setup and how it affects the engine. If they don't have the clutch right, the engine may misfire. And he said dropping cylinders, and that's exactly what you saw on the left side of Gordy Bonnen's cars that left the start line. Raw fuel coming out the pipes as that cylinder misfired, and that hurt the performance of the car, but not so much that he didn't win the round.
So Gordy Bonnen will advance to the finals, and the pairings are set. Gordy Bonnen against Gordon Mineo, if Mineo can get his car ready for the finals after severe damage in that accident at the end of his semifinal run. Now to Steve with a man who's had an amazing weekend.
I'm not leaving here without saying goodbye to Wyatt Radke. They knew you were here this time.
Yeah, it was a great weekend for us. Unfortunately, you know, I don't know. Right now, that deal with the hills and everything, that's really, and Gordy, I hope everybody's all right.
We did too.
Thanks.
Wyatt Radke, a funny car driver to watch in the future. Ready now for the finals in the pro stock competition. It's an all-Johnson affair. Warren Johnson and his son, Kurt Johnson.
This is the third time this season these two have met. The Southern Nationals in Atlanta and the Mopar Parts Nationals right here on Sports World just 2 weeks ago. Now, these two drivers, father and son, they have a contest within a contest. They really want to have the better reaction time. The kid thinks, I'm younger than Dad, I should be quicker. Dad says, I'm craftier than you are, I'll be quicker. So in addition to the speeds and the elapsed times, they really look at the reaction time and occasionally have a little wager on who might have the best RT. As soon as Kurt Johnson brought the RPMs up, the clutch apparently locked up and drugged the car through the beams. A foul start. Warren Johnson, for the third time in a row, has beaten his own son. 723, 192 miles an hour for Warren Johnson. He continues a great season. Frank?
Another victory for Dad. What do you think?
Dad's bad. Dad's done good all weekend. He's had a few bad reaction times, and the track's been real tricky to get down. But the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile came through again. Thanks.
And at the end of the track, Steve is with a man who has won his 5th Pro Stock competition of the year.
Well, Warren, I think after two embarrassments off the starting line, the kid tried a little too hard to nail you.
Well, he didn't really have any embarrassments off the starting line. He had 450 and 440 lights, which are excellent lights. And I just had a slightly better light and a little bit of a performance advantage. And maybe the pressure got to him. You know, he's trying awful hard, and I'm awful proud of him.
Well, you've got to be proud of yourself. A huge points lead.
Well, it's really starting to pay off the work, and this really is a result of all the crew. Everybody dedicated and pulling in one direction.
And some good steady driving.
Well, we were a little off today, but we came through.
I said steady.
Steady indeed. After 6 second-place finishes, Warren Johnson finally broke through to take the overall yearly title in 1992 and has a big lead in 93 as his son moves to second. Up next, the Top Fuel Final. That's the car of Doug Herbert being towed to the staging lanes. Herbert to face Kenny Bernstein when we come back.
This is NBC's Sports World, and today it's brought to you by Allied Signals Autolite Spark Plugs, guaranteed for 2 years no matter how far you go. By Slick 50, starting your engine without it is a terrible thing to do. By Meguiar's, the trusted surface care expert since 1901. And by Budweiser, fresh, pure, natural, proud to be your Bud.
Final rounds continue now at the Oldsmobile Springnationals. And in the funny car final, as we suspected, Gordy Bonnen will have a single run after Gordon Mineo's car was damaged in a post-race accident. Now let's go to the pit area. Steve Evans to bring us up to date on Gordon Mineo.
Nobody has had more hard knocks the past 2 seasons than Flash Gordon Mineo. And it appeared today was the day he got a long overdue payback from Lady Luck. But as we all know, that was not to happen. The race car is badly damaged. The fuel tank is caved in where it hit the Eddie Hill van. The chassis is damaged on the left side, and the body looks even worse than this. But even if the car was repairable, Gordon Mineo is in no way emotionally ready to race a car on this day. He feels so bad about what happened, but I can tell you as an eyewitness, he bears no responsibility. It wasn't his fault.
But Gordon Mineo out of the final, leaving on the track all by himself, Gordy Bonnen.
You know, I know that Gordy would like to have a race, especially against Gordon Mineo in the final. but as a driver, I only have one single run in the final in my entire life. And right now, Gordy Bonnen's got to be excited because he knows that he is the Spring Nationals champion right at this moment, and he can't possibly lose.
Gordy Bonnen got the best reaction time he's had all day against the Phantom, and then clicks it off for reasons we certainly can't ascertain. Goes through it at 560, 194 miles an hour. Frank is with the car owner, Roland Leon.
Roland, I know you guys were probably trying for low ET of the meet. You didn't get it, but you got to be happy with the Spring Nationals victory.
Oh, very happy. No, all we wanted to go out there and wanted to see what the 330 was, maybe try some stuff with the clutch and kind of see what it would take. So in case we get another situation like this, we'll maybe know what to do. So, but yeah, we're very happy for Kona Coffee, El Rigo Hotel, and of course the state of Hawaii, Hawaiian vacation car, and Gordy Bonnen came through great. Thank you.
So Bonnen shuts down halfway through the pass, but takes the victory by default. Now we move to the Top Fuel final. Kenny Bernstein and Doug Herbert.
You know, Kenny Bernstein has lost lane choice in the final round of competition, and that's very unusual because usually Kenny's the fastest car going into any final round. Is that going to be a factor? Well, we're going to have to find out.
Well, right now, before we see Bernstein and Herbert, let's go to the end of the track where Steve is with Gordy Bonnen.
Gordy, forget the ease of the final run. You had to take out the two baddest guys today, and you did that.
We did, didn't we? The
one on the old
guys. Well, yeah, well, that was the two baddest guys were here, but from 5 o'clock this morning on, they were all bad. I mean, whoever got on the show today, no matter what their name was, I mean, they were there. And, you know, when Forrest went out and the rest of the guys, it was like they're all bad from 5 this morning on. I've been up since then, and I'm up now. Let me tell you, Hawaii, thank you. This is wonderful. Columbus, you guys are great.
See you soon.
Bonnen got a late start to the season, but makes up some ground in the funny car point standings after these Oldsmobile Spring Nationals, though John Force, who went out in round 1, still has a commanding lead. Bonnen now 9th.
Doug Herbert is a budding entrepreneur, 25 years of age, has a mail-order speed equipment business in the Carolinas, and gets a lot of help from his father-in-law, Tommy Grove, a former racer. Kenny Bernstein is the ultimate entrepreneur in the Roger Penske class. Indy cars, stock cars, and of course this, his own Top Fuel dragster. A car that came in here untried, and what a job it and Kenny have done. A great lead, a great race, but it's Herbert with the top-end power. Doug Herbert has won his first ever NHRA national event. His wife, Sony, looking on and loving every minute of it. A 493 at 295 miles an hour. Bernstein didn't get back the performance he lost, 504, Frank.
The car left the start line very well for Kenny, but earlier we saw cars dropping cylinders, and that's exactly what happened to the Dale Armstrong engine right there. You can see that raw fuel coming out the pipes. He lost a little bit of momentum off the starting line, and he just flat wasn't able to make it up down the course. A fantastic victory for Doug Herbert.
25-year-old in his second full season. Doug Herbert's now with Steve.
Few things are sweeter than your first ever Top Fuel victory. Great.
I just can't say enough percent, and all my crew guys, everybody just does an excellent job. And, you know, my wife and my mother-in-law and everybody that helps me get this car out to the track. Without them, there's no way I could ever do this. And this is a dream come true.
Tell me about the race. Tell me about the race with Kenny.
We went up there. Everything was perfect. Stage normal, and went down, and I didn't see him. And right after I came past the light, I saw him, but my sides are kind of high, so I didn't know if I won. These guys down here gave me a thumbs up. So
493.
Good deal. Thanks.
Tall boy does it.
He did indeed, as Herbert moves up to the number 6 spot in the Top Fuel point standings. Hill still the leader. Kenny Bernstein made the finals and makes up some ground on the leader, Eddie Hill. And that's it for the 29th Oldsmobile Spring Nationals. Competition marred by a freak accident involving Gordon Minio's funny car. The latest word on the 2 Eddie Hill crewmen is that their injuries not as serious as first feared. So for Steve